Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this world. We're here for another edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison. Ned?
Hello, everybody. I'm from Cork, Ireland. I'm the second most famous open water personality in the small county of Cork, Ireland. And I've got my guest is Stephen Redmond, who clearly is the most famous swimming personality in the county. We're both members, inductees, along with Steve Munatonis in the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. Steve, give us a little bit of an introduction, 3 to 4 minutes, if you would, please, but I'll be timing you.
God, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, famous. All right, sir. Famous for being crazy. Steve Redmond. I'm 54 now. I met Ned Denison around 10 years ago and got out of rugby, got out of triathlon, went into long distance stuff. Really liked being out there by myself. First swim was an attempt from the Fastnet into Skull, and then spent 2 hours on the phone to Ned, asking him what I did wrong, what I did right, and was completely overcome by how great it was. Got into a friend of mine was swimming English Channel or training for English Channel. Got out of the triathlon, long distance stuff, the Ironmans and things like that. My knee got too old, too slow to run. And John Carney was training away for English Channel, trained with him, really enjoyed it. We're based in Ballydehob in West Cork. Trained in Lough Ine and trained in the sea and a couple of 16-meter hotel pools. John, unfortunately, had a couple of attempts, never made it. And following year, I was very, very lucky to get in and do a 20-hour swim in English Channel. Knew nothing about it. My wife was my feeder. She kept me in the water, wouldn't let me out. If you want to test your marriage or your relationship, bring your wife on a boat and tell her this is her day's holiday for the last 3 years and see how it goes. But it was great. It was really great, and was really realized that there's something in the water and just wanted to go back every time. Got involved in a friend of mine lost a friend. You know, as we go through life, we're getting older. A lot of people, we lose people. We've lost a lot of people the last few weeks, and realized I hadn't much time. Didn't even know about North Channel, and said didn't even know there was a North Channel swim. And then we had a look at that. It was in our own country, and said to hell with it. Let's have a go at this. Never realizing how difficult it was, how cold it was, and how maybe there's only 1 or 2 times in the whole year you can get in the water. Got away with that in 13 hours. My brother was my backup swimmer. Water's around 11, 12 degrees. My wife was my feeder again on the boat. She told the boat to throttle on. If he starts moaning, throttle on, leave him there. This is what he wanted. And she got me over. Without certain people in your lives, you'll never get these things done. And I've been very fortunate to meet some of the best, like for instance Ned and Steve Munatonis there, my wife, all my immediate family, and we got an email from Steve in the middle of winter asking me, now that I've done the 2 hard channels, what about the other 5? This is how we got into this Ocean 7. Which was, I had no idea what the hell it was. And this is where Mr. Munatonis came into the story, inviting us to take these on. We were in the middle of a depression here, or recession in Ireland. Had no money, had burned a couple of credit cards already. And we said, look, this is crazy. I'm going to end up doing it. But we got into it, got the Gibraltar done, and a couple of buddies came on, Noel Brown and Dave Williams, my physio, and looked at this thing and told me to, don't worry about it. They'll figure out a way of getting me to these locations, and you just train. And that's how it fell in, sir. And we got Catalina, failed in Molokai, was sent to New Zealand, did New Zealand, and then back onto Molokai. 24 hours in the water there, wandering around with whales humping and things like that all around the place, and a few sharks wondering, what the hell is this idiot here? We'll wait till he dies before we hit him. Amazing couple of amazing swims, every one of them. You know, you go out in a swim, no matter what swim it is, you could go out 8 o'clock tomorrow morning and you'll come back different. That's the beauty of the sport we're in, and nobody else has that. I don't think no other sport has that. You go out, and you come back different. And that's what I do every day now. I try to keep up with Denison, but he's way off in the distance there. He's too fast, and don't even talk to me about monotonous. Everybody is faster than me, but we just keep coming back, you know. And very fortunate to get Ocean 7. Very fortunate. I think just a certain couple of years of my life when I got it done. And I'm here and trying to swim here in West Cork now, and bring on the water down in Ireland. That long enough for you, sir? I am not sure.
That's fine, Steve. What were the toughest moment, the lowest moment of this whole Ocean 7's challenge of yours?
Well, there was two really. There was Molokai. The first Molokai attempt was very strange. All I got off the skipper was, we'll meet you at the pier and we'll go around and start in the water. Don't get caught on the reef, and don't worry about the sharks. They're only interested in the morning and the evening. It was 10 to 6 in the morning when we started the swim. I got caught on the reef, broke my nose, ripped the side of my body off the reef, pouring blood, lost goggles, the cap, the whole lot gone. And this was the start of the swim. 13 hours later, we were around 8 miles off Molokai, and the boat was being pushed away around half a kilometer away from me at all times. And the sharks in my mind and in the water were just gathering and gathering and gathering. We had to pull. No explanation from the skipper. It was a surreal type of swim. My brother was the only guy on the boat with him. The first mate was seasick the whole swim. It was one of those just dreadful swims that you don't debrief, you don't talk about, you never mention again. And unfortunately, that was the lowest. And the other lowest was when Mr. Monotonous left Japan. When everybody, we were in Japan, we had 2 attempts in the water there in Tapi. And after spending around 10 days, one attempt, I think around 4 hours. The second attempt, the wind just went crazy after around 5.5 hours. Boat went one way, I went the other. And we had a camera crew with us. Unfortunately, they're a blessing or a hindrance, whichever way you liked them at the time. They took off. Steve had to go. And we were beaten, absolutely beaten. In Tapi, there is no more desolate place in the world to be than Tapi when things are not going well. There is nothing there except a vending machine selling you cans of beer, and nothing. It was just desolate. The wind blowing every day, sitting there in a hotel watching poor bugs being blown in, roadkill kind of thing into the wind and looking down at the boat's moored. It really was the worst. It was the worst. And we call it expedition hatred. Like the guys going down to the South Pole and they're down there for 2 or 3 years, and they all end up going down as friends and coming back. No one ever wants to see each other again. And it was the same when we came back from Japan. You know, everybody had the ideas that we were going to have a great time, and we were going to go nothing but bars and drinking and karaoke. And Steve will tell you, like, you know, it was nothing but plain cheese rolls with squeezable cheese and 7 or 8 different types of courses of raw fish every morning, every lunchtime. And the poor guys in Japan laughing at me, trying to eat this stuff and trying not to die at the same time. It really was. It was so far out of our comfort zone that I still have nightmares about it. Like, you know, which I would love to go back to Japan, but you know, I don't. That was the worst. Failing is the worst, and letting people down.
Sorry, the most enjoyable moments?
Oh, I see that. Most enjoyable moment was probably Molokai and finishing Japan. The 2 of them were definitely the best moments. Coming into China Wall and getting up there, and my wife, who I didn't know was even coming to Hawaii, standing on the wall, giving out to me for taking so long. I was around 500 meters, I think, off the China walls, and everybody was waiting. And I said to the skipper, Ivan Sakagi, I need a feed. And he looked at me, man, hey, what do you want to feed for? You're 500 meters. You could surely make it. No, I want to, you know, in your lockdown, crazy 24 hours in the water head, I'm not going to make it the 500 meters. And that really was the best. Finishing that place. There's so many high points. New Zealand was another, you know, down there with the guys in New Zealand, the Irish people that looked after me down there. I wept leaving the country because, you know, when you go out and you ask a stranger to help you, and they will do anything in their power to make you finish and get you over the line. It's beggars belief, you know, what people, the capacity of people to help. And Japan, Noel Brown and myself and the skipper were the only people on the boat. It was that perfect swim, 12 and a half hours. And Noel, around 5-7 hours into the swim, he says, when we get close, I'll jump in the water and we'll go in for the last 100 meters together. And so I spent the next 7 hours watching Brown pull the translator, who was seasick, over to the skipper, and then let him puke over the side of the boat and pull him back to let him lie down on the ground. It was open boats in Japan, you know, as you know. And just waiting, watching him to see when he was going to pull his trousers down and get in the goddamn water. And it never seemed to happen, you know. These, you know, somebody says something to you in a swim, it kind of multiplies by 1,000. And it's in your mind all the time. And eventually he kind of jumped in the water and he smacked his head on a rock. It was so shallow. And we came in the middle of nowhere at around 3 o'clock in the morning. And that was it. It was done. It was done. Thank God.
I've known Noel a long time, but I've never fantasized about him pulling his trousers down. But we'll move right along.
Exactly. It's not a pretty sight at the best of times, especially when he had been drinking most of the day with the skipper to keep him happy, you know. The skipper used to try and get my attention. He'd drink a can and he had a little remote control for the boat. He was sitting on the side runner and he'd just throw a can in the water when it was time for a feed. It was fantastic, like, you know, that give me the thumbs up. That they were the high points. So many high points. Every end of a swim is a high point. You know, you've made it and you can't believe it, and you know that yourself. You're just lucky.
So you live in a beautiful part of the world, and one of the big features down in West Cork is a bit of a rock called the Fastnet. And in the old days, it was submerged at high water, accounted for a lot of ship crashes. At low water, it came up a little bit. Some time ago, they built a big lighthouse on top of it somehow. It was the site for the deadly Fastnet race, yacht race a number of years ago, where tragically a number of people died. And the Irish used to call it, what was it, the teardrop? Because it was the last thing the Irish immigrants saw as they were leaving the country during the famine headed to the United States. It's an impressive piece of rock. There's nothing friendly about it or the water between it and anywhere. And you, being local, you've done a number of Fastnet races, Fastnet swims rather, but the one that just impressed me the most, and I want you to talk about it, was starting in the village of Baltimore, swimming out around the Fastnet and coming into the village of Skull. Technical with the tides, ugly, night, lonely. Talk us through, first of all, what were you thinking to think about it? And what were the elements of the swim, Steve?
Well, thinking about it, you put this idea, you say this idea to somebody like, I'd like to swim the Fastnet. Why not? It's out there and it's in our water. And then it just takes a life of its own on. And that's how that happened. I was training for New Zealand and Molokai. And John Connie yet again came up trumps. We used his boat for the thing. And he said, probably this is going to be one of the most difficult things ever because of the tide. As you say yourself, I'm around 2.5 K at my very best swimming speed. And you need the 6 hour tide. You take the tide on a high in Baltimore and swim out on it. It pushes out into the Atlantic when the tide is going out. And then it pushes you back in when it turns. But out there, the tide is turning nearly all the time. It's a dramatic place. It's cutting itself in two or three times every 6 hours. It's a really dangerous place. And we decided we tried one summer, just 2 days after there was a Fastnet race. A big American yacht went down out there. And they were actually on the pier when we were leaving, and they couldn't believe we were actually going to swim out to the goddamn thing. This was my endearing memory of these poor crew praying. I always kind of say a small prayer before I start a swim. And they did the same. They were praying for me because they thought I was crazy, and we were very fortunate. It was a great day. It's a very difficult swim. You have to get across the gap between Sherkin and Cape is called the Gasconon. And if you get in too close, you get caught in the suck there, and you're in there until the tide turns, unless you can get out of it. And we were very fortunate. Got out in around 6.5 hours. Got seasick, got the whole shebang. Tide just turned correctly just around an hour after we went around the fastnet and headed into Skull. As I say, it was a big training swim, huge training swim, which took on became one of the best swims of my time. Like, you know, we were in there the first time. We've done it twice. The first time was 13.5. The second time was 12.5. The first time we came onto the east of Long Island. The second time we came onto the west of Long Island and came down the Sound with the tide pushing us faster into Skull. It's like every swim. It's a miracle if you get it. You know, there's so many things can go wrong, and after around 10 hours, all you want to do is get it finished with. But it's probably out there on par with the English Channel, really, and we're very fortunate to have it here as right on our doorstep. And it's nearly a secret, as you say. It's nearly a secret. We've had a few swimmers like the likes of Carol Cashel, who's a far better swimmer than me. I don't know if she's a better swimmer than you, so I better not say that. But she came down last year and swam fastnet to Dragomna, and that was just beyond belief, you know, getting away with that. So we have it's open everybody now, but I'm hoping to get out there now when we get back in the water and go from Baltimore out around it and back in. I had one attempt around it, not last year or the year before. You know, it was last year, I think, and we got out and just came around it. And the 3 miles from the fastnet to Cape, if you get the tide wrong, the tide might be going, but it's still pulling against you. So you're stuck in another kind of warp, void there for around 2 or 3 hours. But once you get into the lee of the Cape, you're okay. But then you have the Gasconon so you have to get out around 2.5, 3 miles away from the Gasconon. But if you get in too close, which the skipper can bring you in, he might think we're going to skid through it or something like that. It all depends on the skipper's expertise. So there's 2 things can go wrong. And we just turned on the fastnet after a perfect 6:40 out to it, and the weather just went to hell. Just rolling wave, and with no way but just to pull it after another 2.5 hours. And somebody gave me peppermint tea, sir. Never ever drink something that you've never tried without training. Mr. Nathan Timmons managed to say, "This will help your stomach, Steve-O," and I didn't know what it was. And they throw you your bottle and you drink it down, and then I realized that wasn't a feed. So I'm blaming that.
Maybe he should have offered you a slice of raw fish to go along with it.
But no, it really was a great swim, and that was for these guys up here helped me get the water unit down here that is sectioned in with the lifeboat to help when people are in trouble. But as it's just same story. We get ready, we train, we're ready to roll there now. As you say now, I'm 54 there now, so I train slightly differently now. I don't do as much aerobics as I should, I guess, but we'll be busting it up now and hoping to try with this strange world we're living in now. We might have a lot more people looking to do this swim this year. We have 3 or 4, already lined up, but it's just to get them in the water, and it's just incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult, and it's like no swim is easy. No swim is easy, but the fastnet, you can see it all the time, and it's on your mind all the time. The light shines even at night. On a clear night, the light comes in the bloody window of my room, so it's always on my mind.
So one of the things that when I talk to people new to the sport of marathon swimming, or even intermediate marathon swimmers, they tend to think a lot about what they're going to do in the water and what they're going to do to manage the current and what they're going to do to manage the line they swim. And I think maybe with the experience you've had around the world, I think maybe you should give some words about the swimmer's job is to kind of swim and shut up, because you have no control over anything else.
The only thing you've got control over, and sometimes that doesn't even work, is going to the bathroom. That's about it. You know, everything else, you let go of all your control systems. You let go of them. You get the best people you can possibly put on the boat, people that you know will get you to the other side. And you tell them, you do anything you have to do to get me there. You know, do anything you have to do, but don't let me stop. And they really take that to heart. And they all I do is follow the boat. That's all I've been told to do. And you know, really, that is the truth. Forget about, oh, I'm going to swim a straight line from here and across the English Channel and do it in 10 hours. Forget about that. You know, that's great if you can do it. Amazing. But things never work out the way the way you think they're going to work out. For instance, I thought I was going to do English Channel in around 14 and a half, 15 hours, 17 hours. I was in the water in the dark, and there was a red light in front of me, and all I could see was the skipper on the boat having a cigarette. And then the next thing I see the skipper fighting with the observer on the boat because the observer wanted to stop it. I was stuck in the tide for around an hour and a half. It wasn't moving at all. I did around 500 meters in 2.5 hours. And the skipper refused to let the observer stop the swim. So, these are guys that you just met 10, 12 hours beforehand. That guy was so committed to me getting this swim that this is what you have to find. Find the best people, trust them, put your life in their hands, and just keep swimming. Try not to moan too much. You know me, I'm not one to complain very much. But we all moan, and when things go wrong, you kind of have to just take it on the chin, get out, give out to yourself a fair bit, and just blame yourself. Japan was a real lesson. Japan was maybe we weren't good enough. Maybe we just weren't good enough there when we failed a couple of times. We went over the first trip. It was really, really, really hard. 8 hours in the water, coming back into where we started. And I thought I was finishing. Nobody had told me that we were just going around in a huge circle and actually ending up in the exact same spot as where we started the swim. So if you want anything to kind of brain, just destroy your mind, that's it. Even thinking about it still, I thought I was in good condition. I was swimming really well, but I just couldn't beat that current. And there's always something to beat you. There's always something to beat you, and if you're just fortunate enough to be. I was Gagagi in Hawaii. He said, 24-hour swim, Steve. The gods gave you that. Gods gave you that swim. And he took me to a place in Hawaii where they bring the old guys, the old people, and they let them swim with the dolphins. And he says, make your offering here, man, because you owe the gods. And I do owe the gods, and I say it every day. I really do appreciate it for everything and the people I've met. I owe everybody.
Describe to us kind of the final question. You're fortunate enough to have one of the great training locations in the world, a place called Loch Eyen. Describe to people what it is, how far it is from where you live and work, and pre-coronavirus, how often you'd go down there and have a bit of a paddle and what you do down there.
Loch Eyen is it's a saltwater loch, but it's freshwater. It has an entrance for salt water around the width of a canal. And the tide comes in there every 6 hours and goes out every 6 hours. So there's a big mix of salt water and fresh water. And it's, no matter what wind is blowing, you're going to get a swim in it, which is it's a great place. We swim all year round there, as you say. We invite, great swimmers down there. They come down, the distance comes down. The distance week is always there as well for a day. It's a special spot. You can be 10 minutes from the pier, and you can get out of the water, and you're going to have an hour and a half walk back down through thorns and briars. It's a real learning place. It's much easier just to swim for another 20 minutes and get home, but you can get out at any time and walk for another hour and a half in your togs and over fields and get shot at by farmers and things like that. So it's much easier to swim there. It's around a 3K circumference around the outside. And it's always pretty safe. If you want to stop, you can stop. You're near shoreline, and we just lap it. We have a lot of social swimmers there. We have a big community of swimmers there. We have guys training for English Channel triathlons. It's a wonderful place. It's like Kinsale. It has its own draw of lunatics coming to it every day. And we would try and get down on a heavy training schedule. We'd be down there before work in the morning at 6 o'clock. There's nothing better than getting in the water in the dark and swimming into the light, and then coming after work again at 5:30, 6 o'clock, do another hour, 2 hours, then go home, apologize profusely, bring wine, do whatever you got to do, and head for the boiler room or head for the room or your safe room, and do it again the next day. But it's one of the best places I've ever trained in, and I'm very fortunate to have it here.
You haven't mentioned the soft coral, you haven't mentioned seahorses, and you haven't mentioned that when the tide turns, the rapids also turn. The rapids go out to the ocean.
I was keeping that. I don't want people to know about that thing. So as I say, the water going out to the ocean, it's around the width of a canal, and it's full of seaweed, and one end is lower than the other. So only on certain tides you can get in at one end, and it's kind of like being on a fun fair ride. Around 10 seconds later, you're popped out into the loch or you're popped out into the sea. And it's just one of the greatest experiences you'll ever have. With the tide getting low, it can get very dangerous if you're going out, because you can smack your head off a fine boulder or anything like that. But going in, there's nothing like it. And also the nighttime swims with the bioluminescence is just stunning down there. So you're just in the water, and it's like Hawaii. Every stroke, it's like an angle grinder underneath you, and you're never alone. So it's just, I don't want to tell people these things, man. You don't want people coming down there. This is mine. But every year it seems to get busier. That's the great thing about this sport, as I say to you, it's the people that come to it. They stay at it, and they fall in love with it. They hate it. They go away from it. They come back, and it's a huge community out there. And we're very easy to talk to. And we're, some people, we tell people how to get things done. We give advice to anybody that wants it. And we always love to see people going further than they think they can go. And that's what it's all about, going further than you think you can go every time.
Steve, thank you very much for your time today, and we hope that the situation in Ireland gets better and better and better, so you can go back to Lough Erne.
Thanks very much, guys. Love you so much, Ned. Thanks, Stevie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great to hear your voice, and great to see you, Steve.
Yeah. Bye.